Back here on CBS Sports HQ, y'all remember that one team in Kansas City that's won like 2 Super Bowls? I feel like we haven't been talking about the Chiefs enough because they haven't been playing. They've been on that bye. In fact, Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown a pass since Christmas, but he's got a new daughter, that same hunger to win. He's also got a healthy ankle. On the other side, how about the Texans showing up and taking care of business against the Chargers in the opening round? The Chiefs and the Texans will meet this Saturday, 4:30 Eastern, for a shot in the AFC title game. Welcome back here to CBS Sports HQ. Haley Sutton, joined by Jacqueline D'Agostino, and we've got our NFL crew here, Danny Kanell and Mike Renner, joining us. Guys, let's start the conversation with the defending champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's so funny because we haven't seen them play in so long. It's almost like we put them away because there's so many other talking points. Danny, I'll come to you first here. This seems like a loaded question. It seems like a silly question, but so much time has passed since they've been in a routine, since they've played. Are you concerned at all about the fatigue for KC, or how are you feeling about them playing their first game?
There's always like that rust versus rest debate. Like, is it good to have this much time off where you don't have a pressure-packed situation and then you can go on the field and play a team that's just coming off a win? Or do you want to take the side of where you have to win? Like, some of these teams have been in playoff mode for the last 3, 4, and 5 games of the regular season, so they're kind of already fine-tuned. If it was anybody else besides the Chief, Haley, I would kind of worry about it. But this is a team that has been there and done that, silly. Right? So, I mean, like, and they have veteran leadership. You feel like they know how to do what it takes to prepare for the speed of the postseason. So I'm not that worried about them. I'd be more concerned, I don't know about you, Mike, but I would be more concerned about the entire body of work this year for the Chiefs, which has been underwhelming, and yet here we are. Once again, they've got a #1 seed.
Yeah, I think that's it, is that the expectation now is like Super Bowl or bust for them. It's not any other year for them, but I do agree that the time off, if it was the Texans in the same situation with so many young guys just making their postseason debuts, yeah, I'd be worried, but it's like this is the exact same team we saw a year ago. There's not really any impact player besides Xavier Worthy on this roster that hasn't been there before. So I think this team uniquely qualified to take darn near a month off.
Yeah, and we kept saying if there was a year to get them, it was last season. So, like, I don't know. And honestly, to your guys' point, they've just won in the ugliest ways. But still, even though we're concerned about the body of work, they're still sitting at, what, like 15-3, or that was, or 15-3. That's a record, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah, something like that. But anyways, it's really good. And they have a bye. But okay, history is obviously in the way of them winning 3 in a row because no NFL team has done that before. Mike, what else stands in the way from the Chiefs from getting another one? Because it just feels like, or another Super Bowl, I should say, they just keep finding ways to win. Even if it's the ugliest way, they're like a cat with 12 lives.
Darn good football teams are in their way. I mean, after this one, so they're obviously big-time favorites in this one, but after this one, every team they play, the next 2 teams they'll have to face will be, by pretty much any analytics, I'm guessing, better than them in terms of how they perform this regular season. There's not a lot to point to besides win-loss record and history to say that the Chiefs are the best team in football. They really struggled in certain games and had a lot of luck go their way to be that #1 seed this year. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're facing either the Bills or the Ravens and Vegas makes them an underdog, and they get to the Super Bowl and maybe face the Lions, and Vegas makes them an underdog again. That's just how they see this team, because the data supports that they haven't been as good as their record is right now.
They remind me of, it's the Golden State Warriors during their dynasty run when they were winning back-to-back-to-back. And they were a team that in the regular season, the one year when they chased the Chicago Bulls record of regular season wins, they were super dialed in. But then it was all about just get us the postseason. Like, who cares what we do in the regular season? Like, that to me is what it feels like the Chiefs. There was never any panic. There's no real sense of urgency. It's just like, hey, we're going to be in the postseason. That's all we want is a seat at the table. And then, oh, by the way, they figure out ways to win, and they still have the best position, the best seat at the table in the postseason. So I think it's themselves. I think that's what would fall short. Like, I think the biggest difference is when you have to flip the switch. Because at times it felt like they were going through the motions a little bit. They weren't real worried, and they were able to flip the switch, and every time it came on when they needed it to, they need to start in the playoffs with the momentum, start with the urgency, start with sharp play, or else they will get beat.
Yeah, it's just like we keep, I think, trying to find words to describe this team and just their evolution and how they just keep finding ways, and that's the best way to put it. And so if you're Houston in this matchup, it makes it, I feel like, kind of difficult to prepare because you know the weapons, you know what what they're going to present, and yet you still have to do it. We had an interesting conversation with Charles Davis before this Texans-Chargers game, and he said they needed to find that magic that they had last year that everyone was worried about, and they found it in that Chargers game. I mean, Mike, it was a huge win, 20 points. They made Justin Herbert look like he's never played football before. What changed for the Texans, and how can they continue that into this big game?
Well, they have elite players. That's the one thing they do have. They may not have the best depth. They may have big holes at certain parts that are very important to this roster, but they have elite talent that can change games, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Whether that's Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, your two pass rushers, whether that's Derek Stingley at corner, who had 2 interceptions last game. Like, there are guys that don't necessarily, you don't need scheme, you don't need whatnot, that they can just go out and get you a bucket on that defense side of the ball. And then Nico Collins on the offense side of the ball as well. So I think there are stars on this team, and when it gets to the postseason, those are the guys who step up and play and shine the brightest.
This is still a very young team by and large. You know, their quarterback, you mentioned Will Anderson Jr., C.J. Stroud, they're just in their second year.
Yeah.
D'Amico Ryan's extremely young. There's almost a naivete to what they're doing, and I do think you can become a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. When things are good, they get really good. When they're bad, they can get really bad. They need to ride this roller coaster to where it's good and it gets better. Like, because the way they played against the Chargers last week was probably as good as we've seen them all year. C.J. Stroud early in the game stepped up on a long 3rd and long, made an incredible play for a touchdown. It was kind of like, oh yeah, we're capable of doing that. They need to have something like that happen in this game to kind of keep their confidence up and realizing they can hang with this team, or else we'll see them exactly what they did last year, which was a first-round blowout win, and then they get beat on the road in the second round.
Exactly. That was going to be my question, DK. To your point, this is a young team, and maybe if it's your first year for, you know, D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., you do have that naive aspect. But now you know what there is to lose, too. So how, you know, what have you seen, you know, in that Chargers game that's going to make you feel it might be a little bit different this time against the Chiefs?
I think the formula is easy. They just have to do what they did. They just have to pick off Patrick Mahomes 4 times. They just have to have Joe Mixon go for 120 again. And C.J. Stroud looked like the all-pro that he looked like his rookie year. I kid, but they do. They will have to play close to perfection. But we've seen the Chiefs be vulnerable. Again, when you are a favorite like this with the Chiefs, you have to knock this team's confidence out of them early. If the Texans come out and they have success early in this game, and it's halftime, and it's only 10-7 or 14-10, and they still feel like they're in this game, that would make me nervous as a Chiefs game. Not saying they can't still win the game, but you want to try to knock this confidence out of the Texans.
I think they're uniquely qualified to do it. Like, where the Chiefs are the weakest, offensive tackle position, that's where the Texans are the strongest on the defense side of the ball. You're not facing a better matchup. Those guys had 11 pressures against an awesome tackle duo in the Chargers just a week ago. I mean, they might double that in this game against the Kansas State Chiefs if they really have to drop back to pass. So I think it's going to be big for them to stop the running game for the Houston Texans, to stop the Chiefs running game, that is, because I think that's where they're going to want to lean on early.
Well, and I mean, we saw this matchup, you and I were here watching that game, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Houston Texans game, where they unfortunately lost Tank Dell as well. So to both of your points, they're capable of competing in this game. Vegas maybe feels differently. They have them as an 8.5-point underdog coming into this game. So we talked about how they can get it done. I need a pick from both of you here. The line is 8.5. The point total here is 41.5. DK, where are you going?
I'm going to take the points with the Texans. I'm going to go with what I've seen all season long, with the Chiefs kind of play down to the level of competition. They really haven't been just dominating teams for the majority of the season. Even that Texas game, remember what a significant impact that had when Tank Dell went out. You saw the emotions that were C.J. Stroud is crying on the field, and they had to bounce back and really didn't, but I would have expected him to. Now they're kind of rallying for a cause with C.J. Stroud wearing the Tank Dell t-shirt under his uniform. Like, maybe that inspires them to play above themselves, but I haven't seen the Chiefs exactly blow through opponents. So I'm going to say the Chiefs win by a touchdown or less.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Texans as well. I mean, the Steelers game on Christmas was really the only time we saw them cover this sort of number against a real playoff team. And it's really hard to call the Steelers a real playoff team after how they ended that season. So I'm going to go with the Texans as well. And I kind of like the over in this one. I think we see some points put on the scoreboard because I think we see some big-time plays, explosive plays, whether that's on the defense side of the ball with pick sixes or on the offense side of the ball with long touchdowns.
All right, yeah, that total sitting at 41 and a hook. Danny, Mike, we certainly appreciate it, both the gentlemen taking the Texans to cover, not necessarily win outright. Important note there. Make sure you stay locked in to CBS Sports HQ. We got you covered all through the playoffs, all season long. News, highlights, scores, everything you need. It is all here, and it's all for free.